In this explainer, we're unlocking a secret library, one that held the blueprint for an entire nation. We're diving into how Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, the founder of modern Turkey, literally read his way to a revolution. So, how do you build a brand new country from the ashes of a fallen empire? Where do you even start? An army? A new constitution? Well, for Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, the founder of the Turkish Republic, the answer was way more fundamental. It all started with books, a lot of books. Get a load of this number, 3,997. That's how many books we know were in Atatürk's personal library. And that tells you something absolutely crucial. This wasn't just a leader who, happened to read on the side. He was a scholar, and his mind, his intellect, that was his most powerful weapon for forging a new nation. But here's the thing. He wasn't just reading these books. His copies are just filled with underlines, notes in the margins, question marks next to things he doubted. I mean, he was arguing with these authors. He wasn't just soaking up information. He was in this constant, intense dialogue, really wrestling with their ideas. So, come on, let's step inside that hidden library. Together, we'll uncover the intellectual blueprint he was drawing up for modern Turkey, one page at a time. For decades, this library was his private world. But now, thanks to this huge multi-volume project, it's been opened up for all of us to see. And it reveals not just what he read, but how he read. I mean, these notes give us this incredibly rare, intimate look into the mind of a nation builder right in the middle of his work. So where does that work even begin? Well, it starts with him taking a deep, really critical look at the very foundation of the Ottoman Empire that he was trying to replace, its secret history. And the thing is, he never just read one side of the story. You look at his shelves and you find these traditional Islamic histories, written in Ottoman Turkish, sitting right next to these modern critical analyses from Western scholars, like the Italian historian Leon Caetani. He was weighing the evidence, comparing sources, thinking like a true historian. And what he chose to focus on, that's what's so revealing. In one of Caetani's books, he marks this passage that talks about how the stones of the Kaaba were revered before the time of Islam. See? This shows you his mindset. He was searching for the human history behind these sacred traditions, not just taking the divine story at face value. And when you look at all his markings, a really clear pattern starts to show up. He's intensely focused on the Prophet Muhammad as a historical figure. He's constantly highlighting bits about the influence of Jewish and Christian traditions on early Islam. He's scrutinizing the political context, the social stuff. He's basically trying to find the pre-Islamic roots of Arab customs. He is deconstructing the whole narrative. Okay, look at this right here. He puts a bracket around this entire section that's dealing Prophet Muhammad's political dealings with the Jewish tribes in Medina. For Atatürk, this wasn't just scripture. No, this was a case study in politics, in making alliances, in human society. It was something to be understood rationally. So all of this leads to a huge question, right? If Atatürk is intellectually pulling away from the Ottoman Islamic identity that had defined his people for 600 years, what on earth was he planning to replace it with? Well, the answer, as it turns out, was right there on his bookshelf the whole time. You can literally see him pivot, moving from one history to another. He basically puts down the history of Islam and picks up the history of the Turks. He was hunting for a new origin story. And this search, it takes him way back, deep into the ancient past. He's looking for a national identity that was purely Turkish, something that existed before Islam even entered the picture. So check this out. In a book called Turkish History, he's reading this pretty dense section about ancient languages in Central Asia. And then right there in the margin, he scribbles this simple two-word note that just reveals everything about where his head is at. Türkçenin kuvveti. It means the power of Turkish. And right there, that's it. For Atatürk, the foundation of this new nation wasn't going to be shared religion. It was going to be a shared language and a shared ancient culture. That was the new bedrock. And his reading on this stuff was just as systematic. He dives headfirst into pre-Islamic Turkish epics like the Oguz Destani. He's studying the ancient Turkic religions like Tengrism. He's researching the laws and social structures of the old Turkic empires, and, crucially, he's tracing the development of a pure Turkish language, one stripped of all that heavy Arabic and Persian influence you saw in the Ottoman court. And his notes, they point us straight to what are called the national epics. He's really focused on the fact that these stories, the core heritage of the Turkish people, were created before they adopted Islam. He wasn't just reading history anymore. He was actively building a new mythology for his republic. Okay, so how does all of this private reading, all these notes in a library, turn into a full-blown public revolution? That is the final and most crucial piece of the puzzle. It's actually a pretty clear three-step process that you can see play out over thousands of pages in his library. Step 1. His critical reading lets him question and really intellectually dismantle the old Ottoman identity. Step 2. His deep dive into history helps him build a totally new vision, one based on that pre-Islamic, national Turkish identity. And then Step 3, armed with that vision, he unleashes his famous radical reforms, secularism, a complete overhaul of the language, and a brand new national story for Turkey. You see, Ataturk's library wasn't some quiet escape from the real world. No way. It was a laboratory. Every single note he made in the margins was a test, and every page he turned was an experiment, shaping the very framework of the modern Turkish state. I mean, think about his most famous reform, secularism. This wasn't just some political policy he cooked up. It was the absolute logical conclusion of all his reading. Once he starts studying religion as a historical and social phenomenon, the way he did, then separating it from the machinery of the state becomes an intellectual necessity. The political move just followed the intellectual one. So what these books prove more than anything else is that the Turkish Revolution wasn't an accident. It wasn't an impulse. It was one of the most thoroughly researched, intellectually planned revolutions in modern history, born from thousands of hours of quiet study, debate, and reflection in his library. And that leaves us with a pretty powerful thought, doesn't it? Ataturk's library shows how the very private act of reading can literally shape the destiny of millions. So it kind of forces us to ask ourselves, what future are we building right now with the things on our own bookshelves and in our own